So, generally, I consider Paul Thomas Anderson one of the greatest filmmakers that's currently alive, having done such masterpieces as There Will Be Blood, The Master, and Phantom Thread. You'll notice I skipped Inherent Vice because I'm not so sure that's a very good film. I bought it back when it came out on home video, and I've only seen it once to date. Basically, it's really interesting how, in my opinion, he can make so many truly just brilliant, great films, and then in a lot of cases, in the case of Inherent Vice, and maybe to a little lesser of an extent with this film, it's funny how someone who can make such great films can also, in my opinion, miss the mark, but I guess that can happen. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you for simply a movie review, having just seen Licorice Pizza. I thought it only made sense that I stop on by to review Licorice Pizza, so I'm going to do that. Paul Thomas Anderson's most recent film, Phantom Thread, I regarded as a really, really great film. I would rank it up there with the greatness of There Will Be Blood and The Master. I really, really enjoyed that, and it kind of made me wonder, like, okay, it seems like when he does movies that take place, in a longer, further away time, in the case of those three films, that they seem to have this greatness, and then when he did Inherent Vice, that took place, I want to say, in the 70s, possibly around the same time that this film does, I thought Inherent Vice was just kind of just all over the place, too goofy for me and psychedelic, and just kind of trying to be all cutesy and failing in my particular opinion. If you think the otherwise, I mean, that's absolutely fine, but for me, Inherent Vice didn't do a lot for me. Honestly, when I saw the trailer for this film, Licorice Pizza, I was kind of concerned because I was like, okay, well, this takes place in the same era, more or less, that Inherent Vice took place in, and it's like, uh-oh, are we in for like an Inherent Vice 2.0? And having seen the film, it's kind of yes and kind of no. I'd say more or less no. There's that one scene with Sean Penn and that other guy, that are like drunk at the bar or the restaurant or whatever, and do that kind of stupid motorcycle stunt scene and stuff that actually really kind of felt like basically all of Inherent Vice felt to me just kind of this just goofy ass, like just goofy, either stoned out or drunk characters just speaking just gibberish, and just not being very interesting. So if you like me weren't a fan of Inherent Vice and are worried if this is like Inherent Vice, not really. Just that one scene, in my opinion, kind of felt like Inherent Vice. Basically, if you don't know the story of this film, it takes place San Fernando Valley, 1973, and it's basically about this kid who's like some actor in high school. I think he's supposed to be like 15 or 16 years old. Basically, the beginning of the film starts with, I guess they're having photos taken, their yearbook photos or whatever, photos taken, probably yearbook photos at, when the movie starts, and there's this girl who's like in the movie, kind of like the star of the movie more or less. She's like, I don't know, mid-20s or something like that, and she's walking down, as kids are approaching the, gymnasium or something to go have their photos taken. I don't know if she's on mirror duty or whatever she's doing, but I think this is the scene where they kind of, this boy and this girl kind of first meet, and he kind of asks her out and this and that. So I don't have a whole hell of a lot to say about this movie. I only saw it once. I'll probably see it more times than once, but I just wanted to, since it's still relatively fresh in my mind, I just wanted to stop on by and see what kind of a review I could actually do, having only seen it once. Honestly, in my opinion, I'm quite sad to say that there's not a whole hell of a lot to even say. It's basically just, I read a little bit online that it kind of took a little bit of inspiration from American Graffiti, and I can see that in the sense that it's kind of directionless. And for the record, I don't have any problem whatsoever with a directionless movie, quote-unquote directionless movie. I really actually quite, would rather prefer almost directionless movie compared to the the tired and all too often used, beginning, middle, end, and, plot points, we got this goal and let's achieve it or not achieve it by the end kind of a thing. In my opinion, there should be, more kind of directionalist movies in a way, but it's really weird how, as much as I'm kind of like for directionalist movies, I'm not too sure I'm a big fan of a lot of the directionalist movies I see. I guess to me, like if you're going to have a directionalist movie, and one could argue that maybe this isn't a directionalist movie. It has this arc, I guess, where it's kind of like this goofy kind of love story where, boy meets girl and, boy's kind of after girl and does things to kind of impress girl. There's a little bit of Taxi Driver in here as well, if you've seen Taxi Driver and that kind of stuff, where the boy. It seems like there's some other movie. Oh, Rushmore. This movie also reminded me of Rushmore, where that the character, the high school character or whatever in that movie is trying to impress the teacher. So it's kind of the same thing going on. This is like a mix of American Graffiti meets frickin' Rushmore meets frickin' whatever else movie I said. And also, honestly, it seemed like Paul Thomas Anderson saw and liked very much. When I watched this movie, it just reminds me of Paul Thomas Anderson take on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Honestly, it actually feels more like that than any of the other movies that I've already mentioned. But yeah, it just seems to have it seems to take from a lot of other movies, which is fine. I mean, at this stage in the game, it's really hard not to, when you're making a movie, to really make anything too fresh. But that's the premise of this movie, just boy meets girl and boy's kind of after girl, and it's just like throughout the course of the whole movie, which I want to say is 2 hours, 10, 15 minutes long or something like that, is just like the trials and tribulations and the hijinks and stuff, what goes on, I guess. What's kind of a bummer about this movie is I don't recollect it really ever letting the viewer know like the time frame that this film takes place over. We all know that American Graffiti was over the course of just one night, which was kind of cool. I want to say that so much happens in this movie. Obviously, it's not over the course of one night, but is it like 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? It's really hard to say, but obviously I'm not gonna, having only seen it once, I'm not gonna, even if I could remember, I still wouldn't do a beat by beat of this particular movie, as it's just kind of all over the place and whatever. But it is kind of this movie where this guy is kind of seemingly smitten by this girl, is like freaking 10 years older than her and kind of after her, and then it's kind of the situation where he doesn't necessarily get her, and this boy being like an actor, there's this kind of pivotal scene where it kind of things are going well with them until like they go in, he takes her for an audition and he tells her to say yes to everything, and she says yes, 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 and also says yes to she'll be, appear topless or naked in a movie. She'd be open to that or whatever, and that kind of makes him mad because he's smitten with her, and obviously, I don't even know if he asked. He probably didn't even ask up until this point, but he's like, well, I haven't seen you topless, and you're gonna go topless for a movie, or you'd be willing to go topless for a movie. So he kind of makes this, adolescent, complaint about that, and there's this one kind of scene where when they get back, she drives him around in the vehicle because he's not of age. I don't know if it's his mom's car or whatever, but drives him home and kind of storms out, walks away. A few moments later, comes back and, you want to see my tits? Okay, fine. Here you go. Don't you dare tell anyone I showed you. And we don't get to see him. Not that there'd probably be much to see anyway. It's kind of her back is to us or whatever, and he sees him or whatever, and it's kind of a interesting scene or whatever. So I think at that point, maybe that's like the 30-minute, 40-minut mark or something. It kind of gets a wedge, jammed in between these two characters, and they'll kind of go on their own separate ways. And out at a particular restaurant or whatever, he'll see her or she'll see him with a girl, and he'll see her with a guy, and it's just kind of this like how like young love can be, just like, oh, I like you, but I can't, I'm going to try to make you jealous from afar, or do whatever, this or that and stuff. And I don't know if they're really trying to move on, but when they see each other in public, it's kind of like a point of contention. It's like, oh, there they are. It's just like, I'll just appear from the distance like I'm just, the happiest person ever kind of a thing, and this and that. And honestly, I'll say that like technically it's a well done film. I'm not too sure I'm crazy with, all of the kind of the color timing choices and stuff like that. Obviously, it's Paul Thomas Anderson, so if you know anything about him, I can say that it was obviously shot on film, which is good. It's kind of a breath of fresh air in these days. But honestly, what's ironic about films being shot, or movies being shot on film these days, is I would imagine they're pretty much all scanned in the computer and cut that way anyway. And even with the the digital, I would imagine digital color grading, I mean, it's kind of like, you don't necessarily know I mean, you can't really even necessarily tell that it's shot on film per se. I mean, because of all presumably digital color grading and stuff. So these days it's like it's really cool when something's shot on film, like Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson or the guy who made that other movie, the frickin' Dunkirk guy. I think he shoots on primarily only film as well, and it's like it's really cool that they still shoot on film. But in these days of post production digitally, it's just like, well, especially if you really can't necessarily even tell that it's shot on film, because if you go to theater and see it in the theater, it's being projected digitally. If you see it on home, it's on Blu-ray, 4K, UHD. So it's kind of like it's cool that it's on film, but it's almost like pointless in a way to even shoot on film, because you can only experience it digitally. So it's almost kind of like, why? But I'd still just assume things be shot on film. But honestly, I don't know exactly how much more there is to say. One thing I want to say, which is really kind of funny, it's basically just this tale of, throughout the course of however many days or weeks this takes place, just kind of like, there's boy meets girl at the beginning arc, and then they're kind of they end up together at the end, and all the goofy whateverness, just adolescent stuff that happens in between, kind of a thing. And obviously taking place in 1973 at the time, there was like this gas shortage or whatever, and this going on. And I found it really weird how there was at least two different characters who, they either tried to drive somewhere, or while they're driving somewhere, like they run out of gas in their vehicles. And I thought it was just like really weird. So like during the gas shortage in this movie, we're having all these characters that can't read like their gas gauge. So just by chance, just to kind of just push that point of the gas shortage in the movie in this particular time in North American history, we're going to also have inexplicably just characters are like left, right, running out of gas while they're driving down the road. And I just thought that was kind of goofy. And the one scene involving that one guy from American Sniper, I can't remember his name right now, but I was glad. I'm not a big fan of that guy, and I was glad to see his role wasn't very big, but he was a kind of a funny character in this movie or whatever. I'm not saying that this movie is just completely devoid of any worth at all. It's like it's to me it's like only half of what Paul Thomas Anderson is capable of. Like I think it's really great in artistic, stylistically, and it's still got the Paul Thomas Anderson attention to craft in terms of just the way it's shot and cut, and those kind of delicate technical cinematic. God, I sound smart. Cinematic, nuances of Paul Thomas Anderson are definitely definitely are found in this movie. I want to say that while I'm on that subject, obviously it's Johnny Greenwood, I want to say, who comes back as, I think he pretty much does the music for all of his films, at least after There Will Be Blood, I want to say. And one thing that, the music for me in Phantom Thread was just beautiful beyond words. And one thing that was kind of disappointing about this film is Johnny Greenwood does the music, but I mean, I can't remember, the first time I ever saw Phantom Thread, I was just like, oh my God, I haven't seen it for years, but I know that there's this one theme that comes, it keeps coming back throughout the course of the movie, and it's just this beautiful theme that just really just pummeled me in the face. Like the first time I saw Phantom Thread, I'm like, wow, that's beautiful, and it makes you kind of get teary-eyed and stuff like that. Like, unfortunately for me, there's like no music in this movie that even kind of like, it's like you knew the music was there when it was there or whatever, but there's no music in this movie that really emotionally impacted me like some of the music in Phantom Thread, I'm afraid. So that was kind of a bummer. One of the other reasons, or one of the other things about this movie that just is kind of mid-ground for me, and just like it went up to here, and it just didn't go any further in regards to just effectiveness, in my opinion. But it's basically a movie just about this or that or whatever, and just you throughout the course of the movie, these kind of eccentric characters pop up. Is it Bradley Cooper, that one guy that I don't really like? He was in whatever American Sniper and whatever else. That might be his name, it might not be. But his character is kind of fun, and you've got Sean Penn character, which I thought was annoying, and some other old guy that I guess I'm not familiar with this performer and stuff like that. So it's like a kind of a American Graffiti, frickin' Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood inspired, Rushmore inspired frickin' movie with just kind of just whatever just put throughout. And honestly, just whatever. And I think I pretty much said my piece of really what I wanted to say about this film. Just a lot of scenes that are kind of like, you know, why is that there, or whatever. And obviously, it's Paul Thomas Anderson's choice to put whatever scene wherever he wants. But honestly, the film didn't really affect me the way that a lot of his films, There Will Be Blood, The Master, and Phantom Thread did. I guess, maybe, I guess kind of something about those films, that the ones of his that I really like, just have these really, really, I don't know, just kind of eccentric or really, really goofy characters. And I guess maybe the reason I didn't like this one as much as the characters were more, it was more like Paul Thomas Anderson just kind of, degrading himself to do more of just a movie about maybe more, I don't know, just average or boring or kind of quote unquote normal people. So I mean, the thing that I love about the Paul Thomas Anderson movies that I love are the characters, among other things as well, just being period pieces in a lot of cases. The music is really beautiful and all this kind of stuff. But for the three Paul Thomas Anderson movies, I absolutely love, like, the characters and the performers and a lot of the stuff going on is really, really interesting to me, whereas this movie, like, the characters, the performers, and what's going on really doesn't, I guess, interest me very much at all, I'm afraid. One thing that obviously can be said about this movie is it's, period movie taking place in 73. There's this one shot where it's like all these cars are lined up to get into the gas station. It's kind of this steady cam shot of, I think one of the characters is running, maybe another character's on a bike or whatever. But I also think this movie has a lot of kind of period music and stuff like that, and obviously from the era and stuff, which is cool and makes it really feel of the time and stuff. But really cool kind of shot of them just running by or biking past all these cars in line for a gas station. Steadicam tracking shot, and I mean, I gotta tell you, I mean, just to get all these cars together, they did a great job on all the production design and getting all these cars together, and the fashions, obviously, and even some of the telephone scenes where people are on the landline. It's kind of like really crappy. Like when you hear the person on the other line, it sounds really crappy, and I asked my mom, "Is that what the phone? Is that what it was like to talk on the phone in 1973? Me and my mom watched this for the first time together because she had some interest in it, because she had seen, when this movie was being promoted, when it was coming out or whatever, that, the main actress, her real siblings are in the movie, and that interested her. But she's a fan of the Paul Thomas Anderson movies that I like as well, and we're kind of like, we're kind of excited about seeing it together. And I was kind of hesitant because I'm, like I said earlier, it took place in the 70s, like Inherent Vice. So I was kind of like a little hesitant to see it, for the first time with my mom without really knowing what to expect. We were both more or less kind of, I think she was on the same page I was, just mid ground. Definitely not the worst thing we've ever seen, but Paul Thomas Anderson definitely, in our opinion, is definitely capable of much better movies, as he's already done. So as I've already mentioned, towards the end of the film, obviously this being kind of a pseudo rom-com kind of a movie in a way, the two main characters end up kind of coming together in a kind of a scene that's kind of part beautiful, kind of part, it seems like I've seen this before kind of a thing. And it's just like, I don't know, for me it feels like, Paul Thomas Anderson was inspired by this, that, or whatever to do his own version of something like this. And just seems like, in my opinion, I mean, he kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of small little parts of greatness to be had in this movie, and like eccentric characters, funny dialogue, and really, really more or less beautiful cinematography, and the way it's shot and cut and stuff I really like. But I just felt like, just like the subject matter, like the way the two kind of boy and girl characters came together at the end, it was just maybe a little too melodramatic or something like that for me. So I mean, that's just something that I thought I should throw in there as well. Yeah, I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of Licorice Pizza. That's another thing. What we were, I can't speak for my mom, but I was waiting the whole movie for, a scene to take place at a pizza parlor by the name of Licorice Pizza, and I don't think it ever happened to my recollection. So, you know, whatever. I guess that's just another side point, or not a side point in this case. But I will go as high as, which isn't really very high at all, but I'll give Licorice Pizza 2 stars out of 4 stars. Unfortunately, you know, I like it more than whatchamacallit, Inherent Vice. I'll probably watch Licorice Pizza again, whereas I haven't seen or Inherent Vice rather. I haven't. I just saw that once and have never seen it again. For me, my recollection of Inherent Vice is just like front to back, just like nonsense. And if you like that kind of stuff, more power to you. But I don't like that stuff. That's why I didn't like that film very much. So yeah, in my opinion, you know, definitely not the best, you know, that Paul Thomas Anderson has to offer. And like I say, after I saw this movie, I'm like, you know, a lot of his most recent movies from There'll Be Blood on, it's kind of like, well, I liked them if they were like period pieces from like the 50s or before, but if it's like, you know, the 70s, like Inherent Vice in this film, it's just like they seem to be kind of kooky. But maybe he makes a movie, you know, feel based on the period, you know, like to him maybe the 70s is kooky, so if he makes a movie that takes place in the 70s, it's kooky. I've got on DVD but still haven't watched you know, Boogie Nights. Obviously I should watch that as well, but that's another film I think that takes place in the 70s, and you know, and I would imagine it's probably very similar to Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza. But at any rate, I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of Licorice Pizza. It was kind of a bummer. It's always a bummer when you know, post There'll Be Blood in the Master, when a Paul Thomas Anderson movie comes out and I see it, and it's just like, you know, at least it wasn't, you know, anywhere as bad as like Inherent Vice. But you know, it's just a bummer when I was so happy when Phantom Thread came out and I blind buyed that on Blu-ray. It's just like, oh my God, now here, this is Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, the version of him that I really like. You know, whatchamacallit, Phantom Thread, and it's just like, yeah, I was kind of worried about this because the trailer just seemed like, maybe it's a little Inherent Vice or whatever. But I think I've kind of said that over and over. I guess that pretty much does it for my review of Licorice Pizza. If you've seen the film, please, by all means, feel free to chime in the comments what you think of the movie. You know, do you love it, and give me your reasons why. Obviously, I'm a kind of a reviewer who's like fully understands that different people have different tastes. So I'm not saying that everyone should agree with my thoughts on this film. This just happens to be my thoughts on this film. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.